I said yesterday, to receive a mantra is one of the greatest blessings in life, because in receiving the mantra, you have received the divine itself in sound form. The mantra is identical with the reality. I didn't say yesterday, and I'll say now because I didn't think of it yesterday. Holy Mother, I did mention that Holy Mother did not know Sanskrit, I mentioned yesterday, which is a relief to many people. That if a Holy Mother didn't know it, then I'm not so bad not knowing it either. Though, let me say that Sanskrit is one of the great studies that there is, a wonderful study. It has been the joy of my life. But one need not feel bad that they don't know Sanskrit, because the Holy Mother herself did not. But there were several Sanskrit phrases she used to repeat. And one I mentioned yesterday was Japat Siddhi. From Japa comes perfection itself. Just from Japa. And as I explained yesterday, just from Japa doesn't mean that that's just sitting around saying Om, 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 casually, that you will attain to perfection. No. In time, Japa comes to possess your whole life. You become Japa itself. You become the mantra. Everything is swept up in that. But it has that power. But another Sanskrit saying that Holy Mother used to say, it also would be Bengali, which is the closest language to Sanskrit. She would say, Nam Nami Obhed. Nam Nami Obhed. It comes from the Sanskrit. It's in Bengali form, grammatical form, but it comes from the Sanskrit. And is practically Sanskrit. You just need endings. The name and the one named are not different. That is, the name, the mantra, and the one named by the mantra are not different from each other. They're the same. So now I'm starting into things which I have not dealt with yesterday, and that leads me to the next thing which I did not deal with yesterday. This Nam Nami Abhed, the name and the one named are not different. Holy Mother also used to say that the how did she say it in Bengali? That the photograph, Chaya and Kaya Obhed. That the image of Sri Ramakrishna or of Holy Mother or of a deity and the deity itself are not different. That is, that in a photograph of Sri Ramakrishna himself is present. This may sound superstitious to the modern mind, and so we don't make statements of dogmas. No one needs to believe that, but it is the experience of many people. And I myself have known several people who were new to Vedanta, ordinary people who had had a variegated life, but they came to Vedanta. And they saw, for instance, one person I know for many, many years now, a devotee. She came new, had never come to a Vedanta center before. She came and saw Holy Mother's picture, and Holy Mother smiled at her. That is, the picture looked at her and smiled. The picture came to life and smiled at her. And that changed her life. I've known people who saw the picture of Sri Ramakrishna come alive. And so the image also, as the mantra is the deity itself. So the image, that is the visual form that we have of the deity, is also identified in the cosmic mind. That is, from the time of Sri Ramakrishna now through timeless future. The image of Sri Ramakrishna and the state of consciousness he was in when the state of consciousness that he represents are the same. And so by focusing on the form of Sri Ramakrishna or the picture of Sri Ramakrishna or the visualization of Sri Ramakrishna, that can lead us to illumination as well. So the name and the form are two manifestations which give us the reality itself. With one problem, one simple little problem, and that is that we don't see it. So we get the mantra, and to us it's a sound. But if we at least have the understanding that great teachers of the tradition have said that the mantra is the reality itself, is the deity itself, then we can at least have that faith and repeat it with faith. If we have the faith that the image of Sri Ramakrishna or the Holy Mother or Swami Vivekananda is the reality of that divine being, then we can use that image with that faith. For us, it's a faith, but in time it becomes a realization. But the faith itself is very helpful if we have that understanding that this is not just a string of sounds that someone gave to me. This is the divine being itself. It's a precious gift, something that's infinitely precious, which ties us forever to that reality. That is, as long as we hold on to the mantra, but the Holy Mother said once, when someone who had been initiated, there was a mental problem that they had, and they became turned away from the Holy Mother and the tradition and left. So a disciple asked Holy Mother, so-and-so has left, but he had the mantra, but he came back to you and repeated the mantra and gave it back to you and said, I don't want this anymore and I'm going. What will happen to him? And the mother said, this gift once given, it never leaves. That which has been given, that stays. And so though the person wanted to escape, and Holy Mother didn't chase him down and say, no, you have to stay or anything. No, the door is always open. A person can come, a person can go. But this is a divine gift that is lodged in the heart of our consciousness. And so it's a great, wonderful thing to receive. It will do you no harm. It will only do you good. And if we take it up with sincerity, it will do all the more good. There was a disciple of one of our great Swamis, Swami Atmarupananda, that I only heard about. I never met this man. But back around the 1950s or 60s, sometime in there, when electroshock therapy was popular among psychologists, extreme electroshock therapy. It has come back now in a modified form among some psychiatrists. But at that time, it was widely used, and it was not wisely used. It was all too easily used, and many people's lives were destroyed by it. So this one disciple of Swami Atmarupananda, his family had him committed for some reason or another, and he had electric shock of those times, which was extremely strong. And afterwards, he couldn't remember anything of his past. The only thing he could remember was the mantra. That remained with him, but he didn't remember other things of his past, but that was still there. So this is something which is sown deep into the consciousness. And if we value it and nurture it and nourish it, then it will bring great good to us. Even when, as I explained yesterday, even when we feel that it's just mechanical, I'm just repeating this mechanically, I don't have any feeling, I don't have any devotion, it's just the same thing over and over again. No, even then it's working. Even then it's doing its work in the unconscious and subconscious minds. It's cleaning out the long accumulated trash in the unconscious and subconscious minds that has been there not just from this life, but previous lifetimes as well. As I explained yesterday, from the time of initiation, when we give ourselves and our karma to Sri Ramakrishna, from that time forward, he helps us in the working out of our karma. From that time forward, we're not alone in the working out of our karma. We may feel alone, but we're not. Sri Ramakrishna is there helping us with the working out of our karma, guiding the working out of our karma, so that it leads to our eternal good, so that it leads to our final and ultimate good. So now I want to speak a little bit more about the mantra itself, and then I'll come to mantra and visualization, and then I'll talk about ways of using the mantra. But let me make a statement, and I'll try to make it once more in this next session that I made yesterday. Nothing I say should be taken as the words of your guru or as a challenge to anything that your guru might have told you, which is different from what I say. I'm giving general instructions for a general audience of people who have initiation from different gurus. And so if something I say conflicts with something your guru has said, or you even think that it might conflict, the best thing to do is to ask your guru, or if you know that it conflicts, then forget what I say and follow what your guru said. So this is not, I'm not substituting for your guru now. I'm giving general advice, which hopefully will be helpful to all, but it should not be taken as a substitute for a guru's teaching, or certainly not as a replacement, not at all. So, the form of the mantra. There are mantras, as you know, like the Gayatri mantra, which I used yesterday to end the meditation, the guided meditation, and I plan to do the same this afternoon after the break. The Gayatri mantra is a statement, Om Bhur Bhuvasva Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, etc. Om, may we meditate on the effulgent glory of that splendorous being who has projected the worlds, all of the worlds, the three worlds in particular, Bhur Bhuvasva. Though in some versions of the mantra, the seven worlds are mentioned, Mahatapa, etc., Janatapa, Satyam. So the Gayatri mantra is in the form of a prayer. It's a statement. There's no bija mantra there, except for Om, which is a bija, of course, but not a deity bija. The universal bija, Om, is there, but it's in the form of a prayer. Most of the people in our tradition receive a mantra, which is in the form, it usually, but not always, there's a misunderstanding about this, even among many of our swamis, because these things are not often talked about. Most often, the mantra begins with Om. It doesn't always in our tradition, and I know that as a fact, that the mantra doesn't always begin with Om, but it usually begins with Om. And then there comes a bija mantra, a seed word, and those are the essence of the mantra, and then the name of the aspect of divinity that this bija is applied to. And sometimes there's a long form of mantras and the short form. The long form is the Om plus the bija and the name of the deity, or sometimes just the bija and the name of the deity, or sometimes it's in the form of a salutation with the Om and the bija and then a salutation to the name of the deity. So that's the general form of a mantra. If some of you have received something which is different from your guru in our tradition, then that's fine. But this is just the general form. And I say that to explain a little bit about the mantra. We're usually told at the time of initiation, or if not at the time of initiation, we're told in books, conversations of Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Shivananda and others, that at the time of meditation, we should repeat the mantra, doing japa, and think of the meaning of the mantra. Many people have come to me from different gurus of our tradition over the decades I've been a Swami, and they said, Maharaj, my guru told me that I'm to think of the meaning of the mantra, but I don't know what it means. The meaning of the mantra is the deity itself. The meaning of Ramakrishna's mantra is Ramakrishna. He's the meaning of it. It's not that a mantra in the form of Om plus the bija plus the name of the deity is a sentence which says something. The bija mantra is not just like Om. The bija mantra is not does not have a dictionary meaning. That you can look it up in a Sanskrit dictionary and it'll tell you, oh, this means this, and this. And so meditating on the meaning doesn't think, okay, now I'm repeating the mantra and it means this, and it also means that, and it also means that, and it means that, and you've got a paragraph of things to remember. No, it means Sri Ramakrishna. It means, if it's Holy Mother's mantra, it means Holy Mother. And so the meaning of the mantra is the deity itself. So while doing japa, think of its meaning means think of Sri Ramakrishna, think of the Holy Mother, or whatever the object of our mantra is. Those are the most common. So the bija mantra, as I said, it doesn't have a dictionary meaning, though every letter in the bija is significant. But you don't even need to know that. What you need to know is that the bija is the manifestation in sound of the reality of the deity itself, the reality of God in this particular aspect. And let me explain once more, as I explained yesterday, because this is a very important point, that a particular aspect of God, like if you accept Sri Ramakrishna as an incarnation of God and you receive his mantra and you meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, it's not that by thinking of Sri Ramakrishna and repeating his mantra that you have an aspect of God, meaning a part of God. That there's this huge infinite God there, and I've got this little piece over here. Somebody else got this piece over there through a different mantra. No. Sri Ramakrishna or any other aspect of the deity is the divine being itself, is the reality itself. There's not mutual exclusion, as I explained yesterday. Each aspect is the whole of the reality. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell of an experience that comes at a late point, at a high point in one's spiritual development, which Kali Maharaj, Swami Atmarupananda, had while he was with Sri Ramakrishna. And the vision that Kali Maharaj had, and which Sri Ramakrishna explained, was he was meditating and he saw his Ishta. And he saw his Ishta suddenly change into all of the other divine forms. And so Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, that's a vision which comes high in the spiritual life, when one realizes that one's Ishta is all Ishtas, that one's form of God is all forms of God. They're not exclusive. They're not pieces and different exclusive pieces of God. Each one is the whole, and not just of God personal, but God impersonal as well. It's something very important, especially nowadays, for many people to understand, not everyone. Some people just love devotion, that's what they want, and they don't have other questions. But many of us love Advaita Vedanta as well, the path of Jnana Yoga, Advaita, self-inquiry, and so forth. So we begin to, many people nowadays, because of the popularity and the deserved popularity of Advaita Vedanta, and some very good modern exponents who make it very clear and clear to understand. People have the confusion after understanding the exposition of Advaita that, well, I want to realize Brahman, I want to realize the self. I'm not interested in a relationship with the deity or something like that. So what's the connection between that and my Ishta and my mantra and all of that? Now that I've understood Advaita, I want to realize the self. I don't have interest in realizing a devotional relationship or something. Well, no, that's based on a natural but superficial understanding, which all of us begin with. I had the same misunderstanding at one time. It took time to understand how the two were connected to the same thing. There are many saints in the Hindu tradition, in the Christian tradition, in the Sufi tradition, the Jewish tradition, and all traditions that have a devotional aspect. Many saints who realized Advaita through devotion. But they saw the ultimate impersonal reality, which they were one with, as the profound depths of God. That is, if you go into the Ishta, you plunge into the Ishta, there you find at the ultimate merging point, you find that is Brahman. The Ishta is not different from Brahman. The Ishta is the personal and the impersonal as well. The personal, the loving face which looks at us. And when we come close enough, we come to the infinite depths. There was a great Christian saint, there were many great Christian saints, but one that I want to mention now, Saint Angela di Foligno, an Italian saint of the Middle Ages. I think she was of the 13th century, maybe 12th. She said, in describing her states of spiritual experience, for Christians, the spiritual practice, the main spiritual practice, was prayer. And so even meditation was called prayer, and samadhi was called prayer. So everything was called prayer. So she spoke of the states of prayer that she experienced. And she said that in the deepest state of prayer, there I went beyond, or I go beyond the Trinity and everything that has to do with the Trinity itself. With God himself, I go beyond God himself and the Trinity into the profound depths of the Godhead. And there is no differentiation, no distinction whatsoever. And I am completely absent. Only the reality of the profound depths, silent depths of the absolute Godhead remain. So she says, I no longer existed. Only God existed. But she's telling what she experienced. So this means that it was the experience of non-duality. It means that she was experiencing that there was no separation between her. There was no little self anymore. There was no little Angela Di Foligno anymore. There was just the infinite reality of Brahman, which is the Atman. And so a devotional person tends to speak of that as the profound depths of God. They don't reject God, because it's through God that they came there, and they still see after returning, as Sri Ramakrishna did in his own life, that when the world returns, then the lovely face of God is there also, because it comes along with the perception of the world. And when they plunge into the deepest state of consciousness, they're in the reality of that same all-loving, beautiful, compassionate face, but where all distinctions have disappeared. Self has disappeared, other has disappeared. Let me develop this a little bit. It's not on the topic exactly, but it's critically important nowadays, because many people come to people like me, and I'm sure the people who come to Swami Sarvastanandaji and our other Swamis, and say that, I've been listening to talks on YouTube of Advaita Vedanta, and I love it very much. But what is the connection with the initiation and all of that? I don't see a connection. But there is a profound and real connection. The two are not contradictory whatsoever. And that we see in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda, all of whom had the highest non-dual realization, and yet were filled with profound devotion. So at the highest level, the ultimate distinction that comes in consciousness when we depart from the non-dual Brahman, when we depart from the experience of non-dual Brahman, which is the reality of each one of us and of everything here. But the first departure from that is the division between I and thou, the distinction between I and thou. You may say that, well, there are three persons. There's I, you, and he or she or it. Why just I and you, or I and thou? I'll use thou, although it's an old-fashioned word, but it still has resonances which you doesn't have. So why I and thou? Why not he and she or it? Because he, she, and it are not present. That's not direct experience. Direct experience is I and thou. And when we grow spiritually, we see that everything is thou. There is no he, she, or it. You see that in the life of St. Francis of Assisi, where he addressed everything as brother sun, sister moon, brother fire. Everything was thou to him. Things that we consider inanimate were animate to him. They were all thou. So the ultimate distinction is only between I and thou. And the I is one half of the division, and thou is the other half of the division. And the two are the same, because they both come. It's a division which comes in the ultimate non-duality of reality. So whether we think of the I or the thou, we're thinking of the same reality. So as Swami Vivekananda said, let it all be either I or thou, but let there be no other. That is, either I am the reality itself, and there is nothing but reality, or thou art the reality, and there's nothing but thou. Even I disappear into you, because you are the beloved. If we were to come so close to God that we saw God here, the infinite ocean of blessedness, Satchidananda, Ananda doesn't just mean bliss. Yes, in a dictionary sense, in a strict technical dictionary sense, it may mean just bliss. But as a spiritual term, it means far more than just bliss. It means not just infinite bliss, but infinite beauty. And it means infinite love. And so if we come to God and see before us God, the infinite ocean of beauty, of love, of truth, of wisdom, are we going to run towards it and then stop at a certain point and say, okay, that's enough. I'll stay here and look at you there? No, if we see that infinite ocean, we want to plunge in. Because as Sri Ramakrishna told Narendranath, the future of Vivekananda, that by plunging into that, you become immortal. So whether we seek the I, as in Aham Brahmasmi, or whether we seek the thou, we're seeking the same thing. So there's not a contradiction between the love for non-dualism and the love for Sri Ramakrishna or the Holy Mother or any other form of God, Christ, or whatever. Now let me come to the mantra and visualization. Let me put this out here so I will remember when it's tea break. A very important moment in the process. So the mantra and visualization. Usually in initiation, we're told to repeat the mantra and visualize the Ishta, the chosen ideal, the form of God, the aspect of God, which is represented by the mantra. There are deep psychological and psycho-spiritual reasons for that. We have 5 senses. We have smell and taste. We have the sense of touch. We have hearing and seeing. The whole universe is made of these 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. Now, smell and taste, they are important. And smell in particular is powerful at evoking memories. I myself have experienced that several times in my life, where I walked into a place where there was a unique smell, and suddenly a whole world of memories came to me just through that scent. Things I had forgotten completely, and the scent itself I had forgotten. But when I came into the presence of that scent, suddenly a world of memories was awakened. So the smell and taste have their importance. But as far as the prime, and the sense of touch certainly has importance. It's through the sense of touch that we identify with the physical body. That's what makes me think I am this. The baby is born and it just sees an ocean of sensation. It doesn't know where its body ends and where the rest of the sensations begin. The baby has to discover its body. It has to begin to learn to, this is my hand. Okay, this is my foot. And the baby, of course, experiences everything by first putting it into its mouth, the great organ of experimentation of the baby. And so, as I like to say, the baby, it's a great day of discovery when the baby discovers its foot and it puts its foot in its mouth, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to take it back out. So the sense of touch is very important because it gives us attachment to the body, the recognition of the body as, unfortunately, it's something we have to overcome, but it gives us a sense that this is me. I end where my skin ends. That's an illusion, but that's what the sense of touch gives us. If you touch somebody in the audience, I don't feel it. If you touch my hand, then I've been touched. You touch someone out there, and I don't feel that I've been touched. That's an illusion. Why should I identify my being just with the sense of touch? It's only the sense of touch which limits me to the body. That's the only sense which limits me to this. And yet I give so much importance to it that I think I am what my sense of touch limits me to. The whole world is seen through my eyes. Why shouldn't I identify that as me? It is me, but I don't do that. So the sense of touch is important, and the sense of touch also gives us the sense of spatial orientation. But the eyes and the ears are the primary organs of taking in knowledge, especially higher knowledge. It's through form and through sound, and especially word, that we understand. Yes, we understand something through touch, we understand something through smell and taste, but higher ideas are conveyed through sound and sight, through form and word in particular. Yes, a time comes when even mechanical sounds have meaning. And we can understand that now, because if someone were out here mowing the grass and the mower begins to make an unusual sound, we know that something's going on, there's something wrong. So it's giving us information. So even from mechanical sounds, we get information. If someone's chopping a tree with an axe, we hear the sound and we know, oh, someone is using an axe. It gives us information. Even mechanical sounds give information. But words are a particular conveyor of a deeper, higher information that doesn't come from mechanical sounds. And so our world exists, and the higher world exists primarily in the realms of form and of word. So those are the two important senses to use in meditation. And so in giving us a mantra and a form to meditate on, we're being given the two elements which are most important to higher understanding. But some people find visualization very difficult. I myself found visualization very difficult. I could have a hazy visualization, but nothing better than a hazy visualization. So a great Swami helped me a great deal in the early years of my spiritual life. Swami of great spirituality, spiritual development, and of intellectual development as well. He said that sound and form come from the same reality. There's a stream of wisdom which comes and splits into form and word. And so we're told to meditate on both. Repeat the mantra and visualize the form, and think of both as living. Some people cannot visualize at all. If you ask them to close their eyes and visualize something, it's just all black. There are only a few people like that. Percentage-wise, it's a small percentage of people who have no visualization capacity whatsoever, but there are those who don't have any at all. Most of us have a little bit of visualization capacity. We can visualize some things. It's just not very clear. Some people have an extraordinary power to visualize. So there's a whole spectrum. And spiritual aspirants fall on all parts of that spectrum. I knew a devotee, one of the 5 people I knew in my life who had met Swami Vivekananda. I got to know her many years ago, and when I would go up to Santa Barbara, California to give lectures, she would invite me over for tea and we would talk. She was an artist, or had been an artist. She was very old at this time, and but she had been an artist, and she said that because of her powers of visualization, she became an artist. It was natural to her. She said that she used to go into the Santa Barbara temple and visualize Holy Mother standing on the platform behind which was the altar, and where these speakers, the lecturers, would come to give their talks. But she said that her power of visualization was so strong that she could actually see Holy Mother standing there. She would look on the empty stage, and there was Holy Mother. She could see her with her dress, her hair, the details of her face, the details of her hands, her feet. Everything was clear. It wasn't Holy Mother, it was a visualization. So there are people who have that degree of visualization. Swami Ritajananda, great Swami that I knew, he used to be the head in Gretz, where I am now, a great, great Swami, a great spiritual soul. He once told me, he died many years ago in the 1990s, mid-1990s. He told me many years ago that he had never known that some people have trouble visualizing. He said, for me, it's so easy. I never knew that it could be difficult to visualize. Yes, for some of us, it is difficult to visualize. So this Swami told me, when I told him my difficulty in visualizing, this Swami that told me this, for himself, visualization was very important. He could visualize. He was a visual person. He said, when I listen to lectures, I'm thinking about something else. But visually, if I focus on something, it's very easy to focus visually on something. So he said that, again, that there's this whole spectrum of people on the visualization scale from no capacity to that's a highly developed ability, or not highly developed. It's just something that they're born with, and everything in between. So he said that in the repeating of the mantra and visualizing, for many people, one will be much stronger than the other. And don't let that bother you. If you're told to repeat the mantra and visualize, try to visualize. But if you find repeating the mantra easy and visualization difficult, then put emphasis on the repetition of the mantra. Have the sense that the deity is there. And if the visualization comes and goes, that's fine. Don't try not to visualize. Let it to be there. And if it comes and goes, if it's hazy, that's okay. But put the emphasis on the mantra. Because the two are the same. They're coming from the same source. In his case, he said that he had always repeated, just tell it in a secular form, instead of qualifying myself and making it more complicated. He said that at that time, he told me, he had always done just the minimal amount of japa that his teacher had told him to do, because he found visualization absorbed all of his attention. So he would just visualize, and that was everything for him. Later in his life, and later in the Swami's development, he himself told me, years later after he had told me this, he said that now the mantra has become extremely important to me. But at that time, he was already spiritually developed, quite developed, but he said that for me, visualization is everything. So I repeat the mantra a certain prescribed amount of times, but not more than that. But I focus on the visualization. But through that, the mantra itself became awakened. But he emphasized the visualization, and for me, I emphasized, and people like me would emphasize the japa aspect. Again, with trying to visualize as you can, but not worrying about the inability to visualize. If you can't visualize at all, then just repeat the mantra and have the sense that, yes, the Ishta is here, I know it, but I don't see anything. It's just black inside. And if you can visualize a little bit, then visualize a little bit. But don't let that be a deterrent from your spiritual practice. What happens oftentimes in spiritual practice, if we're told, do this and this, and I find this easy and this practically impossible, I spend all my time on the impossible part thinking that, I should be able to do that, and so I have to focus on that. No, focus on what you can do and do that better and better. And the other will come in time if it needs to come. The mantra by itself can lead you to ultimate realization. The mantra by itself can lead you to ultimate realization. The form by itself can lead you to ultimate realization. And so both are useful. Both are illuminating. And if we can do both, do both. If we can do a little bit of one and more of the other, then do the other with intensity and let the other come and go. But don't fret that I'm not able to do the visualization, or if it's the opposite. If you're not able to continually repeat the mantra and focus on that, but you find visualization very intense and very easy. Do that which is natural to you, and let the other come along with it. That is, follow along with it, but don't spend all of your time thinking that I should be able to do this other, so let me spend all of my time worrying about what I can't do. No, do what you can do, because both are conveyors of the highest illumination. So now let me introduce what I'm going to speak about in the next session. I'll begin talking about it now, but it'll be the main topic of the last session after the break. And that is the mantra practice, how to practice the mantra. There are different ways that we can practice the mantra, and the ways that we practice the mantra change with time. That is, the mantra practice is not a uniform practice. As we do it, we find that the dynamics of mantra practice change with time. So I want to mention some of the dynamics of mantra practice in the hope that it may be of benefit to you. This also I learned from great Swamis, has been a great help to me, and so hopefully it will be to you as well. Sometimes in the beginning, when we don't have much in the way of devotion, etc., but we want to develop spiritually, we can use the mantra just as something to focus our attention, just to as something to try to bring the mind together, to bring the rays of the mind together. So if we have devotion, we should repeat the mantra with devotion. Yes, let the mantra be filled with devotion. But not all of us do, especially at the beginning. We may want to have it, but the fact is we don't really have it. When we read about a great saint who was a devotional saint, we can admire it, but then when I sit by myself, I don't feel much. So one way of practicing the mantra is just to use it as a means of concentration. And that itself is good. That's not, well, you can't do anything else, so at least to just use it for concentration, but it won't do much. No, that itself is good. As I said yesterday, the mind is constantly chattering, blabbering on and on and on, and just in a random way. In fact, there are modern forms of literature based on the ordinary mind called stream of consciousness literature, which is just a random association. There's nothing very elevated about that. It's the debilitated state of mind that we all suffer from in our ordinary life. And so the mantra can help to overcome that chatter of the mind. So even just at that level, the mantra is helpful in replacing the chatter of the mind and bringing the mind into unity. So if you don't have, if you don't feel devotion, you don't feel anything in particular, then just use it as in the sense of, let me just try to bring the mind around this sound. Let me just focus on the sound. Let me just try to be with the sound, and use it as something to hold the rays of my mind together, and to try to silence the mind. So that's one way that we can use the mantra. And as I will explain, there are several others. So let me mention another means of using the mantra, something that I referred to yesterday, but I'll develop a little more today. I mentioned it yesterday in the guided meditation and after the guided meditation, that we can use the mantra as a tool of purification. That is, if the mantra is holy, if it is the divine being itself, then the repetition of the mantra is purifying our whole being, psychophysical being, the body and the mind. And so we can use the mantra just in the sense of a purification. I mentioned yesterday a practice that a great Swami had taught me when I was in a situation where I felt the need for some kind of protection, or I felt exposed or vulnerable and I needed some kind of protection. He said to think of the mantra as a fountain of sacred sound rising from the heart, and like a fountain breaking over my body and bathing my entire being. So bathing my inside and outside in the sacred fountain of sound. So I can you repeat the mantra as a purification, a self-purification, thinking that I'm purifying the conscious, unconscious, subconscious minds, the body, all of the koshas, everything is being purified by the sound of the sacred sound of the mantra. That's a reality. It's not just a nice imagination. For us, it may be an imagination at the time of practice, but eventually we find that that's a reality. It's actually purifying the different layers of mind, conscious and unconscious. It's purifying the body. It's purifying the different koshas. And so just at that level, it's very helpful to use it as a tool of purification. We can also use it, thinking of it again as the divine being itself, the mantra as the divine being in the form of sound, coming to us in the form of sound. We can think of it as the divine being is the repository of all infinite good qualities. That's the way Sri Ramanuja, the great philosopher of devotion, defines God, the personal God, as the repository of all infinitely good qualities. And so if we want to develop a particular quality like purity of mind or compassion or unselfishness or goodness or whatever it is, we can think of the mantra as the conveyor of that blessed quality, which is a divine quality. And we can recite it and think that it's purifying my whole being with that particular quality. It's allowing me to identify with that quality, to develop it within myself. So it can be used as a purification, and it can be used as a tool of development of spiritual virtue. I'll close out this morning's session by staying on this point and then continuing with several other ways of using the mantra in the next. As a tool of developing virtue, all of the highest human values, all of the noble virtues, what we consider noble human virtues and highest human values, where do they come from? Where do we get the idea that this is a value? We see examples sometimes in the news of someone who sacrificed their life willingly to save someone else. They knew what they were doing. They weren't suicidal. It wasn't that they hated life. They weren't suicidal at all. But they saw the opportunity to save someone else. And they jumped into the fray to sacrificing their own life quite consciously to save someone else. And we all spontaneously recognize the great virtue of that, the great beauty of that. And at the same time, there's the question, could I do that? There's the question, why would someone do that? The question, how could someone do that? So we recognize it as a virtue, and yet it scares us because we think, if I were in that situation, I don't think I could do it. I love my life too much. I would think of my parents. I would think of my children. I would think of my husband or wife. I would think of my friends, my career, things I want to do, things I want to realize in life. But we recognize it as a great human virtue. All of the human virtues, that's just one. There are others: truthfulness, honesty, goodness, unselfishness, compassion, many different human virtues, and the great human values of truth, goodness, and beauty. In the Greek tradition, truth, goodness, and beauty, the same in the Hindu tradition, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, which means exactly the same. In the same order, truth, goodness, and beauty, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, truth, goodness, beauty. In Hinduism, that was recognized to be God. And that's a profound insight. All human values, higher human values, and all human virtues are manifestations of the nature of the divine being itself. And they are spontaneously manifested in a person of spiritual realization. We strive to practice virtues. We strive to be virtuous. The person of illumination is spontaneously virtuous. They can't be anything else, because that is the nature of truth. That is the nature of reality. So what we consider human values and human virtues, those are expressions of the nature of spiritual reality. Those are expressions in human terms of higher reality, of the highest reality, of the ultimate reality. So we can use the mantra as a conveyor of that, as a conveyor of truth, goodness, and beauty, of a purification, of the grantor of virtue, the developer of virtue within me. So I begin with these two, concentration and purification, which is also, in a sense, the development of an identification with virtue and higher value. So now we'll close this session for a tea break and come back in half an hour.